Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam abad. Dear viewers, I greet you all with the best of greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Meaning, may the peace, blessings, and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon you all. You're welcome to another edition of the program, The Gift of Giving, brought to you by Al-Amaanah Aid. And today's episode, the fourth episode of this series, inshallah, will be continuing for where we left off the third episode, which was talking about or looking at the ayat or verses in the Noble Qur'an where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates and mentions the reward for those who are kind and for those who are generous and for those who spend from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them of the blessings or the wealth or the knowledge or the time or the skill that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with. Remember, in spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not just the wealth that you own or that you have that you can spend. It's also in your time or your knowledge that you've acquired that you can also share with others in order to improve them. The skills that you're able to hone in on and help others to also develop as well. The time that you spend. All of these are all considered acts of charity, including just smiling at the face of your brother. This is considered an act of charity as well, subhanAllah. So Islam covers all of these aspects and helps us to note that charity should not just mean or shouldn't just be limited to just what you give alone of your wealth. Although those who are eligible to give, who have been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have wealth, should endeavor to give their wealth as much as they can. But if you have or you don't have, endeavor to always give from yourself. Endeavor to always find things that you can do that earns you Allah's blessings and Allah's mercy. Because remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ, and strive in the cause of the Almighty. Strive in the cause of Allah. بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ, with your wealth, وَأَنفُسِكُمْ, and with your physical self. So Allah wants you to strive not just using wealth alone, but also physically. There are things you can do physically that others cannot accomplish. So spend of that which Allah has given you, and you would equally receive reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And in addition, be amongst those who are righteous and within righteous or with righteous company. Because righteous company help you to see the importance and the good of spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and giving to those who are less fortunate. And that's why with organizations that exist today that are focused on charity, focused on this aspect of generosity and giving, endeavor to support them with whatever means that you can or by whatever means that you can support them, and see to it that you equally earn a reward through that as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in numerous verses of the Qur'an about the reward for those who are charitable. And as I had presented in the previous edition, and some of those ayats in this edition as well, which I'll be speaking to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevates the one who is generous. In Surah Al-Mu'minun, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, successful are those who are believers. He begins to list the qualities of those who are believers. And amongst them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, from saying وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. And amongst them are those whom they give of their wealth. They give, it's a compulsory charity, which is zakat. And zakat, as you know, is also a means of charity. You take out a particular percentage of your wealth and you give to those who are eligible. But there's so many who don't even pay that. And that's even the compulsory charity. You have to pay that compulsory charity because that is what will earn you salvation and success on the day of resurrection. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that those who are successful amongst the believers are those who, endeavor to make use of this particular, or they hone in on this particular characteristic, and they're very generous and they give of their wealth, especially the one that has been made obligatory upon them. Because when you spend your wealth for the sake of Allah, you give from that wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not just purify the wealth for the one whom you are giving, He purifies it for you as well, and also cleanses your heart of attachment to wealth. Because the heart yearns for what it yearns for, and amongst the things that every single human being is drawn towards is amassing wealth or amassing assets and being of status and things like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ. All the way to the end of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how amongst the things that He has placed in the hearts of man, and they are so attracted to, and they are so drawn towards, and they love it so much. The first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described, and He mentioned women, and then He begins to describe wealth, gathering of horses or rides, gathering of assets, gathering of gold and diamond and things like that. These are all things that people are always drawn to. So spend of the wealth that you've been given, and you will see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would remove any attachment to it from your heart and equally elevate you in His sight and ultimately grant you Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala count us from amongst them. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. Till I come your way again on the next episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.